So you just park near one.
What do you think? We went with a Disco Jaws theme this time.
I spent last night in a Hans Zimmer coma, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. So that just, unfortunately took me right out of that.
Right out of it. Welcome back to Off Day, by the way, everybody. But Jessica and I celebrate Jaws on the 4th of July. It's the 50th birthday. I'm wearing my Amityville Shacks t-shirt.
I feel like you celebrate his entire catalog.
I do celebrate an entire catalog. I do. Jim Christopher with you. Andy Tom Cheston is here, and Andy has begun with talk about getting eaten by Jaws. The Astros medical staff claims another. You think the medical staff has like pictures of like Astros logos on the front, like every time they take one down, like World War II?
I don't know, but if you're Houston Methodist, do you really want to be the official medical provider of the Houston Astros at this point? Because I think they're going to get a really bad rap because I don't think we're really actually sending people to Methodist. At the same time, I'd be really questioning my doctor affiliation if I were, having a knee injury and having to go to Methodist today. I'd be like, well, maybe I don't want to have my leg amputated.
Well, look, first of all, at this point, I'd rather go to the VA than Houston Methodist. And
the VA still open?
Yeah, well, I don't even know, but I'd rather go there. Look, we're obviously having some fun. This situation is not Jordan's hand, and it's not Kyle Tucker's leg. Everything that I've been reading is that it's such a hairline fracture that is so small that it wasn't the X-ray that missed. It was the X-ray missed it. The MRI didn't. So it's not as if. I don't know that the same malpractice, but this is what happens, Andy, when you have 10 instances where you can't diagnose a problem that we're not going to give the benefit of the doubt.
No, and it's just more acid. I wish I could understand, and I think part of it is our fan base's fault. Not 100% of it, not even like 90% of it, but some of it. That we have this really weird need and demand for instant information. And I think that the Astros have overcorrected from the Dusty Baker era now with having immediate answers. And those immediate answers have almost always been wrong on these injuries, especially this season. Because I believe that it was at least the front office releasing a statement that his ribs are just sore. He'll be fine in a couple of days. To now he's on the 10-day IL because there's a break and we didn't see it. Don't make the first statement if you haven't even done the scan to see the second, to get the information for the second statement. There's got to be a happy medium between keeping the media informed, if that's part of what you want to do, Dana Brown, and giving them actual information that's real, because it feels like the first statement is never real.
It does seem like Dana Brown is driven by a commendable desire to be a lot more transparent with his former people.
This is the part of the show where we get caught up reading comments.
We are reading comments. You know what? Might as well. We're going to be obviously talking about the Cubs series.
Jim had his reading face on.
I did have my reading. Well, Jeff from Behind the Ivy has joined in. He's pointed out some things that we were all very excited about, Andy. The series obviously was a great one for the Stros. 9 days until Superman. Yes, that will definitely be a topic of conversation for next week. And he's talking about the Cubs are the opposite. Cubs fans are the opposite. The Cubs they basically wait to get all the information, then release info, and the fans are mad that it takes so much time. And I think he brings up what you're talking about. fans are never going to be happy unless the answer is immediate and the guy is fine.
Yeah. And there is no happy place. I mean, go to Twitter after we have a 5-1 homestand against 2 first-place clubs and look at how many angry fans there are about something. Why did we put Hader in this game? Why did this guy bat in this part of the order? Our fan base is a miserable group of people for people who have been, for a decade now, really the beneficiaries of the way Major League Baseball is played now. We are a grumpy, unhappy group of people, and I don't think some of these people would have survived in the 80s when old man rant here. You were happy at that 81st win if you got it.
That's the thing. People who watch this show or watch whatever iteration of the show is being knows that we always will celebrate the 81st win
and the 82nd
and the 82nd, because then you got a winning season. Yeah, I mean it really is a case of a really spoiled fan base, and I want to dive into the homestand because it was actually fantastic. Now, if you look at what the homestand was, the first game of the Phillies began a series of 9 games, 3 of which were against what is barely a baseball team in the Colorado Rockies starting tonight. But this is maybe the toughest stretch the Astros had so far and will have for the rest of the season. And that was 3 games against the Phillies, 3 games against the Cubs, and 3 games in LA. Now, of those 9 games, they've already won, Andy, 5 of them, which means no matter what happens in LA, they will have a winning record in the toughest 9-game pocket of their schedule, without Yordan, without Jeremy Pena for a couple of them, without Christian Walker hitting, and with a really subpar, Jose Altuve, he's going through it this year. There should be nothing but uniform happiness and excitement for the direction of this team, which is clearly better than last year's team. And I wonder if part of the reason why you don't see that is that they don't want to give Dana Brown any credit because they have already established in their head that he sucks, and anything else that doesn't back up that hypothesis is therefore wrong or unimportant.
I mean, I think that's part of it because there's still a part of our fan base that needs Jeff Luhnow to be pulling the strings, or they need James Click to be pulling the strings to maybe a lesser extent. And those guys aren't coming back. Dana Brown, I think, is doing a very, very capable job of putting the pieces on the 40-man roster and beyond to enable this version of this team to win this year. There have been fits and starts. Nobody planned on Yordan missing. He's had 100 at bats so far this year. He's been out since May 2nd. I don't think we're going to see him before the All-Star break. Frankly, I honestly don't see a reason to see him before the All-Star break.
The All-Star break's 12 games away. Like there's no real point.
Nobody expected to lose 2 starters to Tommy John surgery. Nobody expected it to take 3 years for Lance McCullers to come back to pitch. I mean, just there have been issue after issue after issue with health with this team this year. And I know that's not unique to the Astros, but this is the team we watch, so we feel it more. And this Jeremy Pena thing is just another blow, but that's balanced by the fact that this team somehow just keeps winning baseball games. The Mariners are on a little bit of a tear right now. They're actually hitting the ball and pitching well, and they've still managed to pick up half a game in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Well, like I had the joke on Twitter the other day where at the beginning of the stretch I was just discussing, if it would have been us, we would have been saying, well, here's our opportunity to close the gap. And they've absolutely not closed the gap. I actually think in the macro of the 2 weeks, they've actually lost a game.
Yeah, I think that's how it started out. There were 5 and now there's 6. This is a team that is getting contributions from the most unlikely of people. The next of which is probably going to be Shea Whitcomb coming up and somehow getting a start here or there, even though the Astros have zero faith in his ability to field a ball or hit a ball or really do anything with a ball. He probably could step on a ball and maybe trip over a ball. That's kind of what I'm hoping for. But you're getting contributions from guys, castoffs, Luis Guillorme, who is a viable major leaguer only because he is an excellent fielder. But he's an excellent fielder at 3 infield positions, which all of a sudden we need because Mauricio Dubon is now your starting shortstop.
Yeah.
Nobody penciled that in March saying this is how we're breaking camp and hoping things are going to go. But this team just keeps winning, and it keeps winning because Dana Brown is a very good GM and has built a team that wins because of pitching and because of defense.
It's such a in many ways, this Astros team is such a throwback to the kind of baseball that, particularly baseball in Houston, that you and I are used to watching, where you got to figure if that you're gonna get dynamic pitching at game in and game out. And we're getting it from guys that you and I had never heard of before a month ago, frankly. But if you hold a team to 1 run or 2 runs, you're going to win. And that's what the Astros are doing with a lot of, I feel like, offensive bullets that are still on the table that could come out. I don't think Christian Walker is going to be this inconsistent the rest of his Astros career. I just don't.
Yeah, and you talk a little bit about the stretch of these 12 games that we entered into last Monday. The results and the challenge and the results are very reminiscent of what this franchise faced in 2022 around the All-Star break, because there was I think a 12-game series where they had to play the first place Mets at that point twice and then the Yankees.
Yeah.
And so there were 12 games. 9 of those were against very good, very hot teams at that time. And the Astros, like they did this week, surprisingly won all those games. Now, if you're looking for a negative, and our fan base does, Saturday against the Cubs showed how fine a line that we're walking right now, because it's going to take one bad start. And I don't even blame Lance McCullers for that start. The Cubs are a very good offensive team, and Lance McCullers should have gotten a rehab start. There was no reason to put him in the rotation Saturday other than the Cubs kind of struggle against left-handers. Let's see if it works out. That seemed to be the idea. So Dana Brown's not infallible.
Yeah,
certainly. But that's how fine a line this team is walking right now, is if you don't have great starting pitching, it's going to be really hard for your offense to stay in a slugfest, especially going into this next 9 days or 8 days without Jeremy Pena, who is, without much discussion, the MVP of this team this year. I don't think there's anybody who has a legitimate argument unless you start looking at a Hunter Brown as an MVP type.
Or Josh Hader, yeah.
Yeah, but I think Jeremy Pena far and away has exceeded expectations. He is the player everybody pretended he was after the World Series in 2022 right now. It's got to come from somewhere, and the pessimist in me thinks it's going to stop at some point. But all season long, I've been expecting the wheels to fall off every time there's another IL placement, and this team just keeps figuring out how to win.
Well, let's actually look at some good IL news then, because there is some good news coming.
I don't believe you.
I know you don't believe me, and you know what? In some ways, I don't believe me, but I feel like I don't think it's incompetence. I do think it's what you said. I think it was the Astros' attempts to be transparent, and I do think, yeah, that like what you had mentioned, and kind of what Jeff was alluding to in his comment, which, by the way, you should be following his network, and he's got a lot of great baseball content. But
links below,
yeah. Or message him. I don't know. I don't know how this all works, Jeff. We're gonna get you some followers, but anyway, we promise. Anyway, it's yeah. There's the desire to be fast, which I appreciate. But there are some certain numbers that are looking good for the Astros, but also all of a sudden, names that we thought we wouldn't see are facing hitters and about to be starting rehab starts. You could see Christian Javier by August. You could see Luis Garcia by August. They said there's an outside chance Yordan could play against the Dodgers. Now, I don't think they should. I think at this point, with the schedule lightening up, you might as well just wait till after the All-Star break. But when you look at what the Astros have remaining, more than halfway through the season, right this very second, According to tankathon.com, which is one of my favorite favorite websites to visit when it comes to this stuff, they have the 30th most difficult schedule left. The Mariners have the 19th most difficult schedule left. And the Rangers have fallen off the face of the earth. Who even gives a shit anymore? But according to Tankathon, and I want your take on this. I'm going to try to do the math in my head really quickly. Yep.
I'm sorry, but Adolis Garcia hit an electric home run last night. The Rangers still lost by 4, but it was electric.
It was electric, man.
Yeah.
I love how that guy's gone from Ranger fan thinking he was better than Altuve will ever be to he's probably going to get traded at the deadline. Probably. But according to Tankathon, the Astros have 24 what they would classify as hard games left. And they have, 14, that's 29 games left that they would classify as easy. It's right there for the Astros to be everything they want to be, and at a minimum be the number 2 seed in the playoffs, as long as they just play baseball. And I do think that's well within their capability at this point.
Yeah, I don't know who bets against them right now, because as dire as things look from a everyday roster standpoint, Jeremy Pena will be back in when the IL period is up, I assume. So 8 days from now, he could be back. I see a world where maybe he stays out till the All-Star break. I don't know how necessary that is. Yordan Alvarez will come back. Historically, he's going to hit if his hands are healthy. I still expect that Dana Brown will make a move, because GMs for contending teams tend to make moves for another bat. I don't know where you play this other bat at this point. That's a conversation that I think Cedric Mullins is one of the guys that has been attached to the Astros. I don't know who you play him in place of. Do you play him in place of Altuve? Do you play him in place of Jake Myers? Because none of the situations that has those guys in the outfield is going to change with an addition of another outfielder. Ideally, what you could do is pick up a left-handed or a second baseman who hits left-handed, and there's a few of those out there. I think the Rays probably have one that they'd be willing to deal, because the Rays are always willing to deal. But there's a lot of good coming left for the Astros from a roster perspective. I still hold out hope, and maybe I'm whistling past graveyard or the fool's errand or whichever idiom you want to put on there. But I still think Christian Walker is going to start hitting at some point. He is visibly upset with his performance. And if you watch the game on Sunday, no matter how far they kept the field mic away from him, you could still hear how upset he was with his at-bats. And I'm guessing if you were in the first 10 rows of the stadium, you heard all the colorful language. So maybe he gets fined in kangaroo court. I don't know. But I just think there's a lot of good things that are going to happen position player-wise. And like you mentioned, the rotation and the bullpen are just going to get better, because these guys who are trial by fire, Walter, was Walter on anybody's radar?
No.
Coming in? And if he can just let loose for 1 inning, 3 batters or 4 batters, imagine how much better that bullpen is than, I don't know, Caleb Ort trying to duplicate his career year last year. So there's going to be things that get better even on the pitching staff that's really, really good right now. So everything's really positive for the Astros right now if they can just get healthy and have that happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and the to the point of all of that too is they get to do all of that with a 6-game buffer, and I don't think that I don't see the Mariners picking up enough that they're going to all of a sudden just rocket past the Astros. They've certainly had opportunities to do that, and they just haven't. In part because they can't win when they need to, and the Astros just sort of keep winning when they're not supposed to.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we get to watch Framber and Hunter Brown pitch 2 out of every 5 days. That's kind of a blessing right now, because those guys are on top of their game. Hunter Brown is a legit Cy Young candidate, although I don't know if he plays in the correct media market to win it this year. But it's just, there's a lot of good things that people I don't think were expecting the Astros to be able to do. Not just the national media, who constantly has written us off since 2020, but definitely amongst our own fan base, because I think in spite of ourselves, we have to start recognizing that this is a really good team.
It's a really good team, and like we were saying earlier, Dana Brown deserves all the credit. I do want to throw a little credit to Joe Espada's way, where on Sunday start with the Cubs, Fromber lost it all of a sudden. He could have deployed the bullpen. Instead, he did what I think more managers should do, is he saw a pocket, he saw he needed his best reliever, and he went to Brian Abreu in the 7th inning, and that proved to be the difference in the game. And I think we've got to start giving Joe Espada credit for not just these in-game decisions that I think go under the radar that he's doing a great job making, but he's also keeping a clubhouse together that is riddled with injuries. And I want to get your take on Joe Espada before I bring up an article by Chandler Rome.
I think Joe Espada, as much as he struggled at the beginning of last season, kind of adapting to his job on the job, I think this year he's been really, really, really good. And I think Astros fans don't give him quite enough credit for the moves he makes. Some of the criticism I've seen of him online is that he rests guys in weird places and that he falls in love. And he does have some issues with, certain I love this bullpen guy and I forget about this bullpen guy.
Right.
Brian King doesn't pitch for 6 days at a time and then, get shelled and we get mad at him. Some of that's on the manager. But I think he has grown into his role. And it's, believe me, harder to be a manager of a team that your one superstar is Jose Altuve that's healthy and you're getting good performances from Jeremy Pena and Jake Myers and not much else. Isaac Paredes probably should be there as well. But you're still winning games, and you're winning games with the tools you have available to you. That's, to me, a mark of a good manager. It's a lot easier, and I'm not discounting anything Dusty Baker did in 2022, but it's a lot easier to win when you have a healthy Yordan Alvarez, when you have Alex Bregman, when you have Kyle Tucker all hitting well. That is a team that should win a World Series or at least go deep in the playoffs. That'll be the next test for Espada to see, does he have the chops to get this team to advance through playoff rounds.
Isaac Paredes, he really put on display the other day what kind of what he's brought to this team, as good as advertised when it comes to plate discipline. I think he saw something like 35 pitches across 4 at-bats, which pushed the Cubs starter into the 100-pitch realm, and then he faces Jose Altuve on his 105th pitch, and it gets deposited over the into the Crawford boxes. That doesn't happen if you don't have Paredes seeing 30 pitches across 4 at-bats or whatever it was. It was a real team effort, and I think we get too many fans don't get enough about baseball and the game inside the game and how frustrating facing Paredes can be, that you just turn around and leave something up for Altuve and he puts it over the wall. It was a thing of beauty.
Well, and that's back to Dana Brown as well. You go up, pick up an Isaac Paredes, you pick up a Christian Walker. Both are guys who see a lot of pitches. I think Paredes certainly goes to the extreme on that, but these are both guys who have a more patient approach to the plate historically. I know Walker's results have not been there this year. But that's something the team needed to do. It was a deficiency last year. We all saw it. We all talked about it as fans and commentators and whatever we are. I don't know what we are. But Dana Brown also saw it and went out and addressed it. And when this team has gone well and this team has been successful in the playoffs, they're wearing out starting pitchers. And I hope that continues throughout the second half of the season. And I hope that Yordan and Walker and some other guys start making these pitchers pay, because what was the Sunday starter Trillion on that 105th pitch? Honestly, he should have been gone a lot sooner than that, because we should have made him pay for some of those earlier things.
Yeah.
But this is the team we have right now. And Fromber kept that game in check the entire time until Abreu came in and picked him up.
Yeah, really. And what's been kind of fun is the Paredes effect has also been contagious. Altuve, I think they said he's been walked in 4 straight games. Yep. I think there are entire years of his career where he was not walked 4 times. an entire season. So you are starting to see it become a little bit more contagious, and you're exactly right. It was a deficiency that was pointed out middle of the season last year, and it was addressed during the offseason, which is what you're supposed to do when you're the general manager.
I think the biggest beneficiary of that's been Jeremy Pena, because he's taken the lessons from the guys that they brought in, and he's been dramatically more patient at the plate, which has led to, having a plus 300 average and being, a dark horse MVP candidate. He's not winning MVP, certainly team MVP. He's not Aaron Judge. He's
probably top 5, but he's not going to win it.
But as a shortstop, he's literally everything you could ask for right now.
Totally.
And I think a lot of that is learning to lay off that slider, and you learn to lay off that slider when you're not just going up there hacking at the first thing that anybody offers you. And that's been the biggest piece of growth. And I attribute that to having guys like Paredes and Walker on the roster who can show him a different way.
Well, and what about Yonder Diaz, knowing he was going to get a breaking ball with 2 runners on, and instead of swinging at it in the dirt, he handled it and again put it over the Crawford box. Like, it does seem like it seems like you're starting to really see a ripple effect throughout the way the approach is changing, and it's benefiting everybody.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Yiner as a lot of our fan base is and has been. I don't think he is a 30 home run guy necessarily, like people were saying after his rookie year. And in a lot of ways, numbers wise, he's about the same player as Christian Walker right now. But it's a lot cheaper for him to be that way than Christian Walker is to be that way.
Right.
So I don't think he gets quite as much grief, but there are signs where he flashes. And I think that's the tempting thing about him, is that there'll be, a week here where he just puts it all together and looks incredible. And that'll fall off the table a little bit. And so the consistency is something you hope to see. He's still pretty young from a baseball playing perspective and from a major league experience perspective. There were a lot of us, I'll include myself on this, who were willing to sell on Jeremy Pena at some point last year as well, because it looked like that progress was never going to come. So maybe a lesson to some of us who were a little more critical to have a little bit more patience with the guys on the major league roster, because the Astros certainly seem to be.
Well, Chandler Rome had a really good piece the other day, and it forced me to. I really hate that Chandler Rome has blocked me, by the way, because I think I want to tell him I think he's doing such a good job since he moved to the Athletic.
He's on Blue Sky, so you can communicate with him there.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, I keep forgetting I'm on Blue Sky too. But
I'm not blocked on Blue Sky. I am blocked on Twitter.
Yeah, maybe I'll reach out to him. But no, he even forced me to make a basketball reference, because he was talking about this like consistent culture. And I compared it to you in San Antonio, Tim, on Twitter, that it reminded me, at least what I saw from a distance when I was living in San Antonio, and what those Spurs teams were like, where, it doesn't matter how big the superstar is. Everybody that comes in is treated with respect and with value. And I think that a lot of our fans want to wave that away as like bleeding heart, liberal bullshit, touchy-feely stuff. Who cares? Play baseball. But in a game like baseball, where so much of it's between your ears, and it's 6 months living with these guys, that's one of the most important things you can do. And the Astros have seemed to have it to the point where it really shouldn't surprise us that they've stayed competitive, even when the players on the team are not clearly they're all superstars like they were in 22 and before.
Well, and I think we've had a couple of eras where the clubhouse culture has been the driving force. And I think that one of the things our fans like to discount, because the past is, so far away. And for a lot of our fans, it was before they were born. But Bagwell and Biggio ran a clubhouse where guys came in and you knew you put a certain level of work in, and you knew you did things a certain way. And that led to a lot of winning. It did not lead to winning a World Series. So I know we just discount the whole thing, but this clubhouse has a very similar culture. And if you look at all the turnover that has happened since 2015, it's really got to come down to Altuve and guys that pick up on it and carry it through. I think Pena is probably one of those guys at this point. And there's probably a few others, but I think in the article you're talking about, Isaac Paredes talked about how difficult it has been to come in other clubhouses and have to assimilate. And this clubhouse he didn't have to change anything about himself. It was more about if you work hard and do things the right way, you can be whoever you need to be, which I guess is why he's wearing all yellow. I haven't followed up on that.
And I think Dubon's wearing yellow too. No,
Which,
I thought that was
kids. I'm going to just mentally, it's Sunshine Kids.
Yeah. But no, I mean, you're right. That was the part I was referring to as well. Is he even talked about how like he was even then extra nervous to come into this particular clubhouse because of how good everybody has been and because of the standard of winning. And I think Christian Walker, to your point earlier, is putting a lot of pressure on himself because of that. But you know, the story about how Altuve will basically make sure he goes and sits with all the new players for 30 minutes and just hangs out. Imagine what that means to a kid that just come up and all of a sudden you're being treated like a normal human by the greatest Astro of all time. Like it's gotta be something that really does keep this positive momentum going.
Bill Spires is not currently in the clubhouse. Greatest Astro of all time. What are you talking about?
It's clearly Bill Spires.
Hey, we spent a lot of years trying to replace Bill Spires once Bill Spires moved on.
We did.
He's almost Bill Brasky-ish in my mind at this point.
The kids listening do not know who Bill Spires or who Bill Brasky is.
I don't care. We do this show for us. Anybody else, the 23 of you who are watching right now, thanks, but you're just watching us talk.
Yeah, and hopefully you're all our age and you're like, hell yeah, Bill Brasky and Bill Spires, the real killer bees, in my opinion. Yeah, what are you gonna do? Before we go, I know we do have some pop culture stuff. You saw F1.
I did.
Tell us.
I have no love for car racing, so I'll just put that right out there. I'm sure it's a skill, and I know they're athletes.
Sure,
and a lot of stuff.
Skill.
But I will give you the special bias that most of us growing up in Houston have. I drive on 610 every day. You don't impress me.
Yeah.
At speeds that aren't part of the limit and with reckless abandon. And yeah, we bump and rub and do all the things. I got brought back to and if you don't like Jerry Bruckheimer movies, this is not going to be for you. But if you can put yourself in the place of needing a Bruckheimer Zimmer production that is just very 90s movie fun. It is formulaic. You know exactly what's going to happen. There's a couple of, oh my God, that's a twist and turn. It's not really a twist. It's all like in the first scene, they talk about what's going to happen in the first act. Everything that you need to know is going to happen is going to happen. It is Brad Pitt being his Brad Pittiest, which I'm a fan of.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
I mean, if you liked Ocean's 11, if you like that guy, he's just playing himself. And I'm convinced that's what he's doing here. And if this is the Brad Pitt that actually exists in the world, I want to hang out with this guy. But it's a fun. It's hard these days to have fun at a movie. It is not a high stakes film. It is not, I don't think, going to be a franchise, although I'm sure they'll try to crank out another one because that's what Hollywood does these days. But it was fun, and it was very much a throwback to those. It was a throwback to Days of Thunder in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so that another Bruckheimer movie,
which was the first Bruckheimer Zimmer collaboration. I found that out this morning. But the Hans Zimmer soundtrack is all over the place. The rock and roll music that they used for bumpers and intros, great, well placed. The action's fantastic. Again, I don't have this great admiration of people who drive cars for a living, and maybe I should, but the special effects, the driving scenes, the racing scenes, the crashes, spoiler alert, yeah, there's crashes. Your favorite character might get hurt.
No.
But I bet he stages a comeback.
As long as his girlfriend's head stays on her shoulders and not in a box, I'm okay.
Yeah, speaking of the girlfriend, even that was probably the weakest part of the movie to me, was the romantic interest that you could have easily deleted from the film and it wouldn't have changed anything. It just, all of it was fun. All of it worked. I'd be willing to go see it again, and I would highly recommend seeing it on a large format screen because the action parts of it, as you would expect with a Jerry Bruckheimer movie, are really, really, really well done.
I'm so like everybody else in Austin, I started paying a lot more attention to F1 once we got the race, and I've never really I never really liked NASCAR, but we did grow up in Houston. AJ Foyt, like I went to the Indy 500 museum, and he's all over that thing.
I am randomly related to AJ Foyt, so you maybe as well.
What? Yeah, I can hear Jessica's Jessica has this theory that you and I think we're related to everybody. Okay.
No, I actually am. I can point it out. I'm related to AJ Foyt.
It's not thoughts. The Polish people like to bang. I don't know what to tell you. They're just all over the place. But
Catholics, no birth control.
Yeah. Hello, with the rhythm method, and it doesn't matter. The rhythm is nice, but there is no method. Hey, so one of the things I'm going to tell you not to do is in fact, Jim's Moving Picture Show is back this week after a hiatus while I was shooting Ballpark Nation, and I'll be doing a Jaws episode. I will be celebrating its 50th, but I did something, Andy, that I had not done in a long time. For as much as I revisit Jaws and I revisit everything about it, I had not read the book since it was my extra reading in Miss Mercado's class and at St. Ambrose my 8th grade year.
The catfish.
Yeah, the catfish. I wish I got in trouble for underlining the word shit because I thought it was super cool that I had a book that said shit in it. The book is bad. And I wanted to dive into part of how I didn't how it even, like, I'm surprised it got adapted. And what happened is it got adapted at a time in Hollywood where they had basically bought the rights to the book and started making the movie before the book came out. So there was this sort of
just give us an outline, we'll start working.
Right. None of the characters in the book are likable. There are things that happen in the book that happen in the movie. Ellen Brody seduces Matt Hooper in a very physically uncomfortable chapter. It's all very different. Don't waste your time. Just watch the movie again if you're feeling froggy.
I mean, isn't this kind of true of a lot of? I mean, Forrest Gump, the novel, was meh. The Natural as a novel, I know there's some people who are going to, I love that much better than the movie. No, the movie, The Natural, was far superior to the book. Not even because of the ending, just a number of different ways. I feel like Hollywood does that a lot, though. We'll get the intellectual property, but then we're going to just tear it to shreds. I think that's like Stephen King's general disdain for the entire industry, right?
Sure. I mean, it is. And I think the Stephen King thing is what helped give birth to The Book Is Always Better. There's nothing Spielbergian about the storytelling in the novel, where there is so much, obviously, Spielberg, even before he knew what a Spielberg film was when he made Jaws. There's a lot of Spielberg in that movie. And so it's just fascinating to me because like I like the Godfather novel. It's way different, but I like them both. But the Jaws book, it's just not well written. And it was shocking to me how bad it was.
Well, this is just a vote for not reading, which is evidently what the current administration would prefer us to do anyway, so I'm good with that. Speaking of presidents, I will throw one more little treat in. I was pleasantly surprised. I like a good documentary, and I think a good documentary can make any subject interesting. And I was really pleased to find, as I was scrolling through Apple TV, a movie that I guess was released in the past week, Deaf President Now. And so it's about a 1998 or 1988 student uprising, and I can't pronounce the name of the college, but it's the National Deaf College in Washington, D.C. So it's exclusively deaf children and deaf college students. And they had a president that was hearing pushed on them that did not sign, did not understand because the board thought that they were not capable of being adults, basically. That was the general gist. And it's about an hour and a half long, but it's a really well done documentary from the point of view of the students who were protesting in 1988, which means they're approximately our age, within a decade or so. Yeah. But it's just a really well done, kind of feel good, if you like, people standing up for themselves type stories. It's worth it. It's worth 90 minutes of your time. I will say that. But I was pleasantly surprised to find a good one.
Well, I saw the trailer for that, so I definitely wanted to check it out. I'm glad that you saw it. I also saw the trailer for Bono's got a new, I don't know if you'd call it a documentary, almost kind of a one-man show kind of thing, but it looks like it's the kind of thing that's going to leave you in tears and incapable of doing anything but listening to U2 for a week. So I kind of get that way a lot anyway.
I have those weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I already have those weeks anyway.
Matter of fact, I
But
think I have one scheduled for next week, so I just might as well see it then and just steer into it.
what I will say is one other documentary that Jessica and I did watch, and we started calling it "Fuck Around and Find Out" the movie, and it was the documentary about the Titan that went down to the Titanic,
Yes.
and if you haven't seen it, it is exactly why the level of ego and hubris on this guy to tell them this was not going to work, and he just fired people and sued them, which is similar to what people do now, I guess. So I don't know.
Did it go into why the media kept saying, "Oh, they're just missing for like a long period of time when they clearly were dead"?
They touched on it. They do touch on that a little bit because there were they were hearing satellite bounces of like sounds of that they thought could have been them, and then they thought if the weird thing is they should have known it was a hull breach and they would have been dead instantly because the hulls never really passed inspection.
I would have to check the timeline, but I'm pretty sure what they heard was like Dory and Nemo looking for Nemo's dad, or dad looking for Nemo. So that may have been kind of you heard sounds, but it wasn't the sound you thought it was. The hubris of that whole thing is probably worth a whole 30-minute episode on this show. I'm pretty excited about playing the Rockies with the Sugarland Space Cowboys roster this week.
I am too. And look, that brings me up to another thing. And I know we're a little over time, so you let me know when you have to go. But everybody wants Bryce Matthews. There's a reason why Bryce Matthews is not coming up, Andy. And it's because his numbers are skewed by being in the PCL.
I don't have the same feeling about Bryce Matthews as I have about Shea Whitcomb, because I think that Matthews has more tools to work with. And I think Whitcomb is just a top 10 prospect because the Astros, frankly, just don't have 10 guys that are worth anything. But I think the simplest answer is sometimes true. Whitcomb's already on the 40-man roster. He is technically an infielder. We just lost an infielder for 10 days, so that feels like the easiest thing to do. Now, Dana Brown has absolutely sometimes done the not easiest thing to do, but
Cam Smith.
You've got a lot of things, a lot of guys that are on 60-day DL or IL assignments right now who are potentially coming off. So there are a lot of GME numbers that have to work out for a 40-man roster move to make, not to mention the least of which is figuring out a guy to get rid of, which I don't know the Astros are in a position to do at this point. So I kind of feel like when they make the corresponding move announcement later today, it's going to be Shea Whitcomb being called up. I don't expect that he's going to play much because he hasn't played much the last 2 or 3 times that he's called up. And when he does, he tends to take an iron somehow to the baseball and knock it farther away from him than it's supposed to. And that's not what we do on defense.
Remember when the game he got to play at the end of the year last year, and you think he had like 3 errors in 1 inning?
Oh, no, it was 4. It was 4 errors.
But Andy, like that. But that, to your point, does that give you any kind of look? To me, I'm not worried about. For as much as I made the joke about Jeremy Pena has a heart transplant incoming, like I'm not that worried about the broken rib. From what I understand, it's a minor crack, and a lot of that's going to be pain tolerance.
Yeah,
as much as it's anything. But does that tell you if they're not going? All right, let's bring up our best prospect at those positions. It tells you something about how concerned they really are.
What I want to see is Jeremy Pena in a Dan Pastorini style flak jacket. If he's a real man, he'll go out and just play with it and not have to worry about it. The Astros are limited. I think Dana Brown's done a lot of good work, and I think you're going to start seeing the fruits of some of those labors with guys who come up in the next few years. Mm-hmm. But we're still sifting through a lot of the old regime and some bad calls on player assignments.
Hey, you're not allowed to question James Click on this show and Astros Twitter because that's like questioning. In fact, they'd rather you question Jesus.
Well, I think there's 2 things. I think this is the guys we dealt last year for Kikuchi, for instance. That's what was left in the organization. Coochie. But you have to acknowledge too that we've given up a lot of talent that hasn't worked out. in major league assignments for players during this decade run. So, it's you didn't get Zach Greinke for nothing, although I think if you ask the Diamondbacks, you did get him for nothing. I think that the Blue Jays, if they're pressed, maybe Jake Bloss works out after he gets back from surgery, but Loperfido and Wagner haven't exactly been tearing up the league in either of the leagues they played in this year. So, Brown had to move some merchandise, so to speak. And I think there's still a couple of those guys in the organization that we've got to figure out how to disengage from. And I think that a couple of them are probably sitting on the major league roster this week.
One of the things, though, that you bring up, another reason why particularly this run that we're on in 2025 is that much more special, because when we talked at the beginning of the year, we looked at all of the things. We looked at, a couple of bad contracts made by Jim Crane, right? We're still paying Montero. We're still paying Abreu. The Lance McCullers deal isn't great just because he's been banged up. But also, like you said, we've been trading guys for this 10-year run. If there was going to be a year where all that kind of came to a head and there was a step back, it was going to be this year, because next year so much of that salary comes off. You're starting to seeing some of the guys that Dana Brown has identified play. And I was reading again in Chandler's article that Dana Brown apparently scouted Cam Smith, even though we weren't going to draft him, and said that guy's going to be a player, but not at third base. Like, he already could tell. Like, I'm not analytics guy, but and to bring that argument back up, but I also am not anti a guy who's been watching baseball for 30 years being able to tell me what a baseball player looks like. Yeah,
and evaluation is full of hits and misses. It just is.
Look at my first wife. I evaluated and I came up short.
I don't think you can evaluate fairly while you're in military service and probably drinking heavily to numb the pain. I just think those are factors that would, yeah.
There were elements you're saying, is what you're saying. Okay.
Sure. I think anybody expecting their general manager to bat 1,000 is fooling themselves. And I think anybody who cannot also see that for every failure you have, there might be 2 or 3 successes is a pretty good ratio. And that's where Brown is headed. He's not there yet. It's an unfinished product, but he had a aging major league roster. He had a minor league system that had not enough talent. And he was basically commanded or challenged with, if you want this job, you have to stay competitive. And by competitive, I mean being a playoff team in Major League Baseball almost every year. And you have to rebuild the farm system and do that simultaneously. And there's not a lot of guys that can do that. And I think Brown is on the right path. That book is yet to be finished. He could completely fall on his face, but I think the early returns are good on that. And it irritates me sometimes when our fan base can't allow them to see that happening.
I mean, that's the thing is we can't have nice things. I think the other thing to remember too is what Jake Kaplan used to remind me all the time, and what you also remind me all the time, is that Twitter is not real life. And we see the 9 or 10 idiots, and I jump into it too, and I pop off at them and whatever. But I think most Astros fans would take the season we're having so far if you had said, hey, in March, here's your situation at the All-Star break or just before, you're going to be 6 games up on Seattle and have one of the best records in baseball. Would you take it? The answer would be yes every time.
But Kyle Tucker, he had a home run. He had a good game Saturday.
He had a good game Saturday. He did have a good game. You know what? Good for him. I think the last thing before we go then is just a shout out of classiness to the Astros, though. When Presley came in the situation, the game was out of hand and whatever, but playing God's going to cut you down when he walked in is the ultimate class move. I'm sure there was also some Machiavellian of maybe we'll get him super emotional and then
that really only worked on Charlie Morton.
It really did. Yeah, we really did blow up Charlie Morton.
I do kind of think the whole video thing is very nice, but I also think that it's a little bit, if we can get competitive advantage for at least this game, I'm good with making a video.
Yeah.
They don't cost a lot to produce.
But shout out to the video editor, though, of telling that story of Presley and Tucker being the last out of that World Series together. As an editor, that was fantastic.
Hey, fans of other franchises, you don't want to hear it, but the Astros are a class organization, and it is why guys rave about the clubhouse and rave about the organization while they're there. Even the guys who leave because there's more money elsewhere never have a bad thing to say about the franchise, the ownership, or the management. And maybe Astros fans should kind of start taking that to heart as well.
Well, you can tell that by how everybody gives Altuve the bird when he gets on base. Oh, wait a minute, that's not what happens. They don't do that at all. All right, Andy, for you, I'm me. We are out of here. We're going to be back next week. I'm not sure what day because I'll be traveling to San Diego to cover the Padres for Ballpark Nation. But you and I, Andy, get to see Superman next week.
I think you're going earlier than I am, but yes, it's happening.